everyone, welcome back to my channel, Everlynn's Books and Tea. We are officially in September, and that means I have had this channel for a year now. So in celebration of that, we are going to go back through the last year and review all the books I read on my first year on YouTube. And then we are going to sort them into categories, but not your typical star rating categories. We have some more unique categories that we are going to use to sort these books. So let me pull those up. All right, so these are the categories. We have 7 categories that we are going to sort these books into. So the first category we have is Like a Day with a Gentle Breeze. So those are going to be our easygoing, relaxing reads. Next up, we have Like a Storm. Those are going to be our dark and thrilling books that have a lot of plot twists in them. Then we have Like a Morning, which is going to be kind of like our mysterious atmospheric books. We have Like a Snowstorm, beautiful but requires patience. So those are going to be the books that are harder to get through, but they're, have beautiful settings, prose, things like that. Then we have Like a Hot Sticky Day. So those are the books that are just slow, exhausting, the ones that you don't really want to finish, the ones that you're close to DNFing. Then we have Like a Weekend Getaway, which are our short, fun books that you can get through in a couple of hours. And then last we have Like Stale Popcorn, which are those books that seem to start off well, but by the end you're like, it just fell flat. All right, so those are our 7 categories. So let's get started. I think we have like 88 books to get through, so let's get going. So first up is The Night Raven, which is a middle grade mystery. It's the first book in this series that was originally written in Sweden. It does take place in Sweden, and it follows a young orphan girl who has kind of found herself being recruited by a detective for her ability to take in scenes and find things that other people cannot. And she has found herself in the middle of solving the crimes that are being committed by a serial killer that is kind of terrorizing Stockholm at night. I loved reading this book. I read it pretty quickly as it was a middle grade book, and it was just fun to kind of read a book set in a different country in a different time period. And I felt it was a very atmospheric book. The mystery progressed well, and I definitely want to read the rest of the books in the series. I enjoyed the 2 main characters. You had like the gruff detective and then the young like protege girl. So I would say this is it's not really dark and thrilling, but it's definitely mysterious and atmospheric, being set in Stockholm. So next up is Black Cats and Bookshelves. So I ended up buying this book for a reading challenge. I had to read a book that was released in August, and this one fit the bill, and I wanted one that was a kind of quick read for me. And this one is definitely kind of like a quick, cozy mystery almost. So set in this hidden town of werewolves, witches. I think it's somewhere in like North Carolina, but the main character is a witch who is engaged to a werewolf, and typically werewolves aren't allowed to marry witches because when they have kids, the kids have the witch's ability and not the werewolves. So if they are like this alpha werewolf, which means that they are kind of on top of the pack, they definitely can't marry witches. So the witch and the werewolf who were engaged end up having to break off the engagement because the werewolf is about to become an alpha. But then there's like this whole mystery that happens around that. It was an okay book. It wasn't like my favorite book ever. It definitely, met the requirements of being released in August 2024, which is why I ended up reading it. So I would say it was like a weekend getaway. It was a short, fun book to read, but not one that I would go back and read again. So next up is Picking Daisies on a Sunday, which is just a cozy romance book where the main character admits her love to her best friend. The best friend denies it basically, and then they meet up again 4 years later. And the best friend asked her to be his date to this wedding. And she realizes that she still has feelings for him, but she doesn't think he does for her. So it was overall a fun read, and though it has a trope that I really don't enjoy in romance novels, the author pulled it off well, and I had a fun time reading it. I would say it is a kind of like an easygoing book. So we are going to put it up to Like a Day with a Gentle Breeze, easygoing, cozy romance. So next up we have A Fragile Enchantment, which is a romantasy that follows the 2 main characters, Kit and Naima. Kit is a prince who has been engaged to the person he's supposed to marry, obviously. And then Naima has been hired to do the wardrobe for the wedding because she is a seamstress. And she has a magical ability to put her emotions into everything that she creates. So the two of them start to become closer friends, and that sets off a whole host of issues as the book kind of travels through the preparation for this wedding. So again, this was a fun read. It was definitely a quick read. I enjoyed the book all the way through to the end. So I would say this is, again, kind of like an easygoing book. There was some like conflict, but nothing too major. So we'll put that in easygoing. All right, so next up we have the first 3 books of the Mortal Instruments series, which are City of Bones, City of Ashes, and City of Glass. This book follows Clary, who has just discovered that there's a world that she is part of that she never knew about that contains shadow hunters, werewolves, and, warlocks, vampires, all that fun fantasy stuff. It is an urban fantasy that takes place in New York, and there's a TV show that is made out of it as well, as most people know. So these books are going to be sorted into different categories because, first of all, City of Bones I felt was a boring book. I really did not enjoy it, and I don't know if it's because I watched the TV show first, so kind of knew what was going on, but this book was very hard for me to get through. So I am going to put this one in slow and exhausting, which I know is probably not a popular opinion, but that is where this one's going. The next 2 books, City of Ashes and City of Glass, I did enjoy reading. Some of it veered off from the TV show, which is why I think I enjoyed reading it more, because I didn't know what was going to happen, so the plot kept me interested. So I'm trying to decide where I'm going to put these. I would say it's not really a short book, but they were both kind of fun books. So maybe we'll put them in like a weekend getaway. Because they were quick to read, because these 2 actually kept my attention. All right, next up we have The Villa, which I was really looking forward to reading. The mystery overall was interesting, but the end of the book just kept dragging on and dragging on and dragging on. It's set in Italy at this villa where in like the 1970s, someone ends up being murdered. And then these 2 girls who are best friends, who were kind of like estranged best friends, decide to take this trip to the villa to kind of rekindle their friendship, and they end up looking into this mystery. Like I said, beginning started off strong, but by the end, I felt like there were so many places that the author could have ended the book, and it just kept going and going. So this one's easy. It's going to be like stale popcorn, started well, but then fell flat at the end. Next up is Flawless. This is book 2 in the Pretty Little Liars series, where that follows a group of girls whose friend had disappeared before the series started. It's a middle grade book. It's a quick read. It doesn't really like captivate my attention that much. I don't even know. It's not really slow either, though. It's definitely not dark and thrilling. I would just say it's short. It's sort of fun. I don't know. It's definitely a short read, though. Quick read. So next up is Meltwater. So this is a mystery book set in Iceland that is book 3 in the Fire and Ice series by Michael Ridpath that follows a detective who was a detective in Boston, who's originally from Iceland and has been requested by kind of like the chief of police of Iceland to come to Iceland to be a liaison and help teach his police officers how to solve murder crimes. So this is his third book. So the crime was that there is this group of people that have made Iceland their home base as they get ready to release a very controversial video. And one of these people of this group gets murdered at the volcano Caldera. That's Caldera? Where the lava comes out. Wherever that is, he gets murdered up there. And now the detective has been asked to solve the crime as well as protect this group. Sort of. So this is, I don't know if it's definitely not like a dark, thrilling mystery book. I would say it's definitely mysterious and atmospheric. I mean, how can it not be set in Iceland? So we're going to put it at like a morning. There should be something after that. That's fine. Mysterious and atmospheric. Oh, it's like a foggy morning. So let's fix that. So next up is A Long, Long Sleep, which is kind of like a retelling of the Cinderella fairy tale. Not Cinderella. Why would I say that? Sleeping Beauty, duh. Fairy tale. And it follows this teenage girl who has just woken up after being asleep for like 60 years, and the world has entirely changed. Everything is different. And she has to kind of come to grasp with this while also figuring out why something or someone is out to hurt her. So this was a short, fun read. I really did enjoy this book. And I think there's a second book in the series that I definitely want to get to. Wisteria Witches. So this is book 1 in the Wisteria Witches series that follows this family, a girl and her mom who just moved to Wisteria, only to find out that they are witches and have magical powers. And they need to solve mysteries in each book. So it's like a cozy witch mystery. I absolutely love it. It's definitely an easygoing book. I'm definitely looking forward to reading the rest of the books in this series. And you don't really even have to read them around Halloween, which is nice. I think this one was set in like spring. I think this book was set in late summertime because the daughter was just about to start school. So it's definitely kind of like a year-round series, not just a October series. All right, next we have the first 2 books in the Time Quartet by Madeline L. Engel. We have A Wrinkle in Time, very famous book, movie, and A Wind in the Door. So these books follow the Murray family and their kind of special abilities. They're super smart, as well as their friend Calvin. They're very hard to explain. I've read them both, and I still don't think I could truly explain what is going on in these. These are, I would say, beautiful, but requires patience because they can be even kind of confusing for children's books. And they're definitely kind of like a slower type read. So I would say these are both beautiful, but require patience to read. All right. So Wrinkle in Time goes there. So next up is Aya, which is a graphic novel that I read for one of my months for my Around the World challenge. It's set in the country formerly known as the Ivory Coast. And it's kind of like a coming of age novel of a young girl who is growing up in a city in that country. I don't even know where I would sort this one. It was a graphic novel. It was a quick read. I wouldn't say it was fun, but I guess, I don't know if it's easygoing either. Beautiful, but requires patience. Maybe that one, because there was parts that were a little bit slower, so we'll put it into that category. So next up is The Spell Shop, which is probably one of my most favorite reads for the past year. I love this book so much, and I wish I could just read it again for the first time. It follows the main character who originally lives in the city where she is a librarian in charge of protecting magical books. When one day there's a fire in the library and she escapes with some of the books on a boat to the island where she originally grew up. The catch is that anyone who's caught stealing these books, these magic books, or using these magic books, if they're not part of the hierarchy, the charge is murder. So she is kind of risking her life for taking these books and protecting them. She ends up on this little island where she has to kind of get to know the other people who are living on this island, which is difficult for her because she hasn't really spoken to anyone outside the library in years. So she has to get used to having a community. And she has to decide whether she's going to use this magic that she took with her to help protect the island, or if she is not going to use it and kind of let the island fend for itself. So that is the book. I didn't do it justice explaining it, but this is, like I said, one of my favorite books that I've read. It's definitely an easygoing book, and if I could read it again for the first time, I would. So next up is Oversea Under Stone by Susan Cooper. This is the first book in the Dark is Rising sequence. And it follows a group of 3 children who are on holiday in Cornwall, and they find this map that happens to be the key to finding a grail, which happens to be the key to fight the forces of evil known as the Dark. So it's kind of like a fantasy novel. The first book is a little bit slower. I read this book when I was younger, and I kind of remember that the books pick up once you hit the second book in the series. This is kind of like a filler book. So I would probably say that It's kind of slow. I would say this one is more on the slow and exhausting side. It's definitely one that you have to get through to get to the books that are a little bit more exciting. Because there's not too much action in this one. So that's where we'll put Oversea Under Stone. Next up is A Haunting of Bryn Weidler, which was a mystery thriller book that follows this woman who just kind of lost her family, I think. And she ends up going to this small town on one of the Great Lakes and staying in the inn. And there's this kind of like mysterious guy that is there as well that she ends up kind of falling in love with. And then, but it turns out that he's kind of been linked to these people's deaths. Like he always shows up there when someone dies. So she's concerned he may or may not be a serial killer. So this was a fun book. I would say this is more of a dark kind of thrilling book. So we're going to put that one there. So next up is The Ninth House, which is probably one of my favorite dark academia books that I've read. It's set at Yale, so a real school. And Yale has these secret societies, and the main character has been recruited to kind of keep an eye on these secret societies who are able to use magic to make sure that they don't abuse it. And like I said, I absolutely love this book. I cannot wait to get to the second book in this series. It's definitely kind of like a dark, haunting, dark academia book. I would say it can be dark, enthralling. We'll put it there. It's definitely like a storm. So that's Ninth House. So next up is Mindbridge, which is a science fiction book that I read and enjoyed that I'm going to have a lot of trouble explaining what it's about. But it's basically the premise is that in the future, they have this way to transport people across space. And one of the planets that they end up going to, they find this creature that is able to allow people to hear other people's thoughts. And then there ends up being consequences to that. So I don't even know where to put this one. I need like one other category. I would say mysterious and atmospheric for Mindbridge. That sounds good to me. Oh no, maybe beautiful but requires patience. The story was really good, but it's definitely not a fast-moving story, so we'll put it there. Hooved Homicide, I can never say that. Hooved Homicide is the second book in the Shayla Murphy series. It follows Shayla Murphy, who is a cop in the US who moves to Ireland because that's where her boyfriend is, and she keeps finding herself in the middle of these murder mysteries and kind of gets herself involved in solving the case, whether the police ask her or not. So this mystery is about a horse who killed a woman, and they need to decide if this happened by accident or if someone kind of spooked the horse into killing this woman. So this is just a short, fun mystery, I would say. There's not much to it, but they are those quick, short, fun reads. Next up is The Temptation of Magic. This is book 1 in a new series. It's kind of a dark academia fantasy series. It follows this main character, Nicole, who is a Imperial, and Imperials have been charged with tracking down dangerous creatures that have murdered people. She has not unleashed her Imperial power yet, because as soon as that happens, then the Wake, who is in charge of the Imperials, will come and hunt her, and potentially kill her if she doesn't join. And the Wake are the ones that killed her mother, so she, doesn't really have any thoughts about joining the Wake. Until one day, a Imperial shows up named Kian where she is living, and the two of them end up having to partner up to solve the mystery of this painting. I did enjoy reading this book. This book definitely took me a while to get through. Most of the action did happen at the end. There wasn't so much at the beginning. So it was a little bit more of a slower read, but it wasn't exhausting. I guess you could say it was mysterious, though. There's definitely a lot of mysteries going on here. So we'll put it under mysterious and atmospheric. It takes place in the Northeast in a college there. So we'll go with that. All right, then we have the trilogy of this series. What is the series called again? Curse Breakers. And that is A Curse So Dark and Lonely, A Heart So Fierce and Broke, and A Vow So Bold and Deadly. I absolutely love this series. This was such a fun series to read. I think it was very well written. The first two books were definitely better than the second. The second I felt was more of a filler book, and the plot wasn't as strong as in the first two books. But overall, this series, I definitely give it a plus. I almost dropped them. So we got to figure out where we are going to sort these. So this book is based on Beauty and the Beast fairy tale, where the Beast is a prince who had a curse placed on him, and the Beauty is a girl named Harper who has been taken from her home in DC to the castle of the prince to try to break, in hopes of breaking the curse. All right, where are we going to put these? I guess we'll put them in mysterious and atmospheric. I think that's the closest thing. We're going to get. All right, here's the curse. Oh, there it is. Up there, because there technically is a mystery to be solved. First the curse, and then there's several other mysteries that happen later on. Alright, so that's that one. So next up is Their Last Resort. This was just the perfect summer read. I had so much fun reading this. This is a summer romance that's set at a resort on Turks and Caicos. And the two main characters, the guy is kind of like the financial director of the resort, in charge of the money, in charge of making sure that the resort isn't losing too much money. And then the girl is one of the employees who takes the guests on all these different outings, like going on boats for whale watching, going hiking. She does like bingo nights, movie nights, things like that. And one day, the owner of the resort tasks the guy to fire the girl. So he goes around to do that, and then there's a hurricane, and obviously, these two characters end up falling in love. And the question is, will they get together or will they not? We will find out. But the girl is super sarcastic and funny. The guy is a very financial set in mind until he starts kind of opening up to her. So this is just a short, fun beach read. Definitely fits in that category. Random Harvest. So this is a historical fiction novel. Well, it's a historical fiction novel now. I think it was written in the 1940s. It is based on the end of World War II. It follows the main character who was fighting. I can't remember. I think it was World War I. He was fighting in, ends up with a concussion, forgets who he is, and then slowly his memories start to return. And this book kind of just focuses on him figuring out who he is, and then what's going on currently as well, where he's made himself a lot of money and stuff. That's how I'm going to explain it. Surprisingly, I actually really enjoyed reading this. I didn't think I would, because I'm not really one for the slow burn historical fiction books. But this one was interesting. There was a little bit of mystery involved there, and the way that it kind of jumped between timelines kept your focus, your engagement with it. So it still required patience. It's definitely kind of a beautiful book though. So we're going to put beautiful but requires patience to read. Far North is another Fire and Ice book. It's book 2 in that series with the detective in Iceland. This book focuses more on the detective in a family mystery that needs to be solved. I'm gonna put it in the same category of mysterious and atmospheric. All right, so next up we have the Cruel Prince series, which consists of Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. This is a fae romantasy series, and follows the two main characters, one who is a prince, and then the second character, Jude, who is a human whose parents were murdered by a fae. Her and her sisters were taken to the world of Elfhelm to grow up there. And this book really follows the main character of Jude as she traverses life in this new world and all the mischief that she gets up to. This was a good series. I definitely enjoyed reading the series. Not as much as Curse Breakers, but these were good books to read. Again, the second book was a little bit slower than the first and the last, but I feel like that's a theme with trilogies. Where would I put these? That's the next question. I don't even know. It's not. They're not like the most easygoing reads. They're not really. They're not as mysterious and atmospheric as the Cursebreaker series either. Though. I think we're gonna have to put them into kind of like the easygoing series. They are easy to read. They're like fun reads. I think that's the best fit for them out of these categories that we have. Oh no. Just reloaded the whole thing and deleted everything. Alright. Alright, so the tier list kind of quit on me and deleted everything that we had. So I had to reload it and reset everything. So the books on the bottom, maybe in a little bit of a different order because of that. But that's okay. We're going to continue on. These are all correct up here, I believe. Alright, so next up is A Little Prince, which is a classic book. It's a very unique book with a lot of pictures and drawings in it. It's a children's kind of like fantasy book. I would just say that is a short, it's a short read. It's a fun read in that it's a very interesting book. I wouldn't say the ending is fun, but I think we'll put it there. So next up is The Secret Book of Flora Lee. This was a wonderful book. I love reading this book. It's a mystery book where part of it is set in the current timeline, and then there's flashbacks back to World War II. The book follows a woman who, as children, her and her younger sister were sent to kind of the countryside of England due to bombs being dropped on London. And there, the two of them invented this kind of like magical wonderland, kind of to keep their thoughts away from what was happening in London where their mom was. And one day, the younger sister ends up disappearing, never to be found again. Currently, the older sister is now a woman working in a kind of like rare bookstore when she gets a set of books delivered, and within that set there is a fantasy book that is based on the world that she and her younger sister had invented. So now she has to figure out, is her younger sister alive? What is going on? Who knew about this story? So it's definitely a good mystery. I definitely enjoyed reading it, and I felt the mystery was solved in a good way, and I don't know where I'm going to sort it. I guess we can go with mysterious and atmospheric. That works for me. We're just going to put it there. Remote is a nonfiction book. It's a memoir about a family living in St. Helena. It's okay. I would say it's a slow and kind of exhausting read. Digging Up Love. So Digging Up Love is a romance book, a summer romance book that follows the two main characters, Alicia and Quentin, who meet each other when dinosaur bones are found in Alicia's backyard, and Quentin is tasked with discovering what the dinosaur is. So, a fun, cozy mystery. I would say it's more easygoing than short and fun, though, because there's definitely some parts that did not feel short. Overall, I did enjoy it, but there were parts that kind of dragged on in here. All right, what's up? Across a Billion Years. So this is a science fiction book. I'm trying to think of what this is about. Oh, this is about a guy. Oh, I remember. So this is a book I ended up reading because I needed a book that was like a archaeological sci-fi book. So this book follows a man who ends up with his team trying to discover these like archaeological findings of like aliens and stuff. And he has a telepathic connection with his sister, who's a telepath. There's more to it than that, but it's been a while since I read this, so we're going to go with that. I would say this is another book that requires patience. It wasn't the quickest book to read. There's definitely some slow parts, but I don't know. I don't remember if it was like beautiful or not, but it definitely requires patience, so we are going to go with that. But not so much patience that was slow and exhausting, so that's kind of why I went with that one. Next up is A House on the Strand. So this is a time-traveling book where the main character, I think, is in Cornwall again, and his friend gives him this mixture that allows him to go back into historical times where he ends up, I don't know if he falls in love, but he becomes intrigued with this woman, and kind of becomes addicted to going back in time. I'm so good at describing these books. This is definitely a mysterious, atmospheric book, so we're gonna put that one there. Haru Shah and the End of Time. This was a fun book to read. I really enjoyed reading this. This is a middle grade book that is based on Hindu mythology. It follows the main character, Aru, as she travels to stop a bad guy who has frozen time, basically. And there's a parrot. There is a fun, I think it was a parrot. It was a bird of some type that talked and was very sarcastic and reminded me kind of like the genie in Aladdin. So it was a fun book. I definitely want to read the rest of the books. This is book 1 in this series, and I definitely want to read the next 4. So this is just going to be a short, fun book. I really enjoyed it. Then we have Song of Silver, Flame Like Night, which is the first book in this series. I think it's a duology. I still need to get book 2. I haven't read it. So this book follows the main character who lost her mother, but before her mother died, she marked her with this mark on her arm, and she comes to realize that she is able to practice magic. And now, I don't remember, she has to save the world. I'm definitely going to have to reread the ending of this to remember what's going on before I read the second book. Overall, I did enjoy this one. There's definitely slow parts to it though, so we are going to go with beautiful but requires patience. Then we have Sweet Hand. So this book was set in Trinidad and Tobago, written by an author from that country as well. I read it for my Around the World challenge. It's another kind of like summary romance about the girl who is a baker and the guy who is like a music producer, and they really do not like each other at the beginning. This is kind of like an enemies to lovers type trope, but overall it was a short, fun read. Wouldn't be a book that I would read again, but I enjoyed it the first time through. Their Last Resorts, I would read that one again. Next we have The Rose Code. So this is another book I loved. I don't know what it is about Bletchley Park, but it just intrigues me, and any book that is set there, I tend to absolutely love. So this is The Rose Code. It's a historical fiction book that is set at the time of Bletchley Park in World War II. And Bletchley Park is the place in Britain where all the code breaking went on to try to break the codes that, the Nazis were sending between themselves. And this book follows 3 women who work there to break the codes. And at the end, this is not a spoiler, one of them ends up in a psychology ward, a psych ward. And this book is another one that part of it is set in the current timeline, and then you get flashbacks to the Bletchley Park timeline. And in the current timeline, they are trying to figure out what happened to the woman who got sent to the psych ward. This was just a fun read. This was a great read. I really enjoyed this read. This is definitely a book I would read again just to see if there's like things that I missed the first time reading it through. It's not really dark and thrilling. It's not easygoing. I would say this is another mysterious, atmospheric read, so we're gonna put it there. The Wicked King. We never put these anywhere. This must have been where it stopped working. So where were we putting these? I don't even remember. I think we said easygoing, so let's put those up there. Wicked King, the Queen of Nothing. And we need the Cruel Prince. Alright, perfect. Alright, next up we have Children of Time. This is book 1 in whatever the series is called. It's another science fiction book. This book was weird. I remember this book just being very weird. Half of it is set in the spaceship. It's like the last of the human race, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And half of it is set on this world of spiders who become intelligent. It's a very strange book. I wouldn't say it's necessarily slow and exhausting. I guess it definitely requires patience for 100%. So we're going to put it into beautiful but requires patience. All right, then is the first 2 books in the Natural series. I actually read and finished the 3rd book today, which was amazing. So we have The Naturals and Killer Instinct by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So this series is kind of like Criminal Minds for the teenagers. That's what it's been called. It follows a group of teenagers, the main one, Cassie, who have been recruited by the FBI for kind of like their exceptional abilities to read people or, decode numbers, things like that. And they are learning how to use their talents to help solve crimes. These books are just fun. These are just short, fun books. They're not really dark and thrilling. I'm going to put them under short and fun. I love this series. I'm going to be so sad when it is over. I only have one more book left in the series, which I'm definitely sad about, but I love this series. I can't wait to read the next one, even though it is the last one. That also makes me sad. Next up is A Great Passage, which is like the opposite of The Naturals. This book is set in Japan, and it follows a group of people who are writing, like, can't remember, I think it's like the world's longest dictionary. It's a beautiful but requires patience book. This is the definition of beautiful but requires patience. It's a very good read. The plot is very slow. It's a very slow burning plot. The characters are well done. It definitely requires a lot of patience to get through. It's definitely a very slow read, but well worth it in the end, I would say. The Boxcar Children is book one of the Boxcar series about a group of children who got found living in the boxcar, got adopted, and are now solving mysteries. Short, fun book. Easy enough. The Atlas Six. So the Atlas Six is another dark academia book. I enjoy this one. Not as much as The Ninth House, but I did enjoy reading it. I know the second and third book aren't as well liked, so I haven't gotten to those two, but I'm interested to see what I think about them. This book follows a group of 6 young adults who have been recruited to this library, I think it was, and they each have kind of these special, like, magical talents, but only 5 of the 6 are going to survive to the end of their training. So I would go with dark. This is a dark, thrilling book. We'll put it next to The Ninth House. That sounds like a good place. The City of Stardust. This was another good book. It's another fantasy book. It's a very unique plot, and I am trying to think of what the plot actually was. I remember it being kind of like a beautiful book. Oh, right. So it follows this family who has... So there's this woman out there who has a vendetta against this family, and every generation she takes one person from this family and they disappear, never to be heard of again. And the last person to be taken was the mother of the main character, and now this person is coming to get her as well. I think that's a pretty good explanation. Where are we going to put this, though? I guess we'll just go with Mysterious Atmospheric. Apparently that's like my favorite category to put books in. Oh, no, it's not. Technically, it's short and fun. I read a lot of those as well. Below the Roots is a older fantasy series for the middle grade age group. It takes place on this utopian world where everything is perfect, or so they think. But the one world they have is they live up in the trees and they're not allowed to go to the ground, and they've been told that the people who live under the ground are monsters and they will kill you if you end up under the roots. So this is I would say this is more of a beautiful but requires patience. The plot is definitely slower, but it's a beautiful, atmosphere. The Black Griffin is the first book in, what's the series called? I can't remember. Valdemar, there we go. First book in kind of like this Valdemar series that the author has written. This book takes place way in the past, before the magic of Valdemar has been fully established. And there are these 2 wizards, a good wizard, a bad wizard, fighting against each other. And they each use these magical creatures to kind of try to win. And one of those magical creatures on the good side is the Black Griffin. And this book kind of follows the Black Griffin's viewpoint, who is a intelligent creature. So that's that one. I would say this is beautiful but requires patience. It definitely took me longer to read than I thought, and there's a lot of parts that kind of slowed me down. So it's definitely a book that requires some patience to get through. The Lady of the River. So this is book 1 in her series that has a very long name, historical fiction series about royalty in England. So this book takes place during the War of the Roses. I can't remember if it's during the War of the Roses or before the War of the Roses start. But that's kind of the theme. I love this book. This is another book, though, that requires patience to read, as I feel like most historical fiction books do. So we're going to put that there. Catherine House. So this is a dark academia. Oh, here's Below the Root. Catherine House. So this is another dark academia book. It's not truly like a fantasy one. I did not enjoy this one. This is such a slow burning book, and I did not like the ending at all in this one. So I don't even know I guess it started kind of well. I think it took my attention at the beginning, but then it just fell flat. So we're going to put this one in that category. Definitely not a book I will read again. Just wasn't for me. A Deadly Education, another dark academia book. This one I absolutely love. This book is set in the Schoolman's School, which is the school that's kind of like in between worlds, and the only way to leave it is either by dying or making it to graduation. It follows the main character, who is in her second to last year. And yeah, it pretty much shows everything that is out to get her and to get the rest of their classmates. It's a very dangerous school. I like this book. I would say this is kind of like a dark and thrilling book. Didn't see that coming. So this is just a fun YA romance novel set in Indonesia that evolves around 2 gamers who meet each other online. And then the female character, Kiki, ends up transferring to the school that her friend is at, and craziness ensues. So this is a short, fun book. Then we have The Faraway Girl. This is set in Guyana, one of my Around the World challenges. This is a coming-of-age story that follows this young girl from childhood to adulthood, and kind of like all the different things that happen to her, all the different events that happen to her in life. And this was a good book. This was definitely a book that I enjoyed reading. There was some mystery in it. It's not like a mystery book, though. I would say this is another kind of like beautiful but requires patience book. Then we have The Spirit Bears Its Teeth. This is another dark academia-ish book that follows Silas, who's a transgender boy who has been diagnosed with veal sickness, which is something that only females get, and has been sent to the sanatorium to be treated for it. Only there, he starts to see the ghosts of students of the past who may or may not have been killed there. So this is another dark book. It's not so much thrilling, it's like a dark gothic book, but we'll put it in the Like a Storm category. I did enjoy this book. I do want to read more by this author to see what his other books are like. It's a very unique one. Studying Scarlet. So this is the first book in the Sherlock Holmes series. I enjoyed most of this book. There was just very weird section in the middle that if you look up reviews, I'm not the only one that thought that. It does kind of come around and you see why Sir Arthur Conan Doyle put that in, but when you first get to it, I honestly thought that whatever copy I downloaded, it was a Kindle book I bought. It was like the complete works of Sherlock Holmes. I thought that the download got messed up in that somehow a different book got stuck in the middle. That is how confused I was. But I did enjoy this book. Because of that middle section, I'm going to say beautiful but requires patience. All right, then we have one of my favorite series, the Truly Devious series. We have Truly Devious, The Hand in the Wall, and The Vanishing Stair. This book is just a fun YA mystery series that takes place in a school. I love mysteries that take place in boarding schools. They're always very kind of like atmospheric to read. This book follows Stevie, who has been admitted to the school for her knowledge of true crime. She's a true crime aficionado, and over the years, she has developed this unique ability to look at things and to be able to solve crime. So kind of like The Naturals, but this series is definitely a little bit different from that. These books were fun to read. Where am I going to put them? I think I'm going to put them in the short fun category as well. They weren't like scary reads. They were just short, fun reads to read in the wintertime. Where's the third one? There it is, Vanishing Stair. All right, so those are those 3 books. Definitely recommend if you enjoy YA mystery set in boarding schools. Then we have the Shadowland. This one, I think, was set in, oh my god, where was it? Bulgaria? It may have been Bulgaria. I'm not 100% sure. But it follows this woman who has taken a job in Bulgaria, I think, to teach students. And on her first day there, she ends up running into this man who is a taxi driver, and he ends up trying to help her return this urn that somehow found its way into her possession. So there's this kind of mystery that has to be solved, and they make their way all around Bulgaria. This was a good book. I really enjoyed this book. I don't know where I would put it. It's definitely not easygoing. It's not dark and thrilling. It is kind of mysterious, so I think we'll put it there because there are some not scary parts, but parts where people's lives may or may not be in danger. So we'll throw it in there. All right, then we have A Winter in New York, which is a Christmas book. This is my first Josie Silver book. I actually love this book. I know not everyone does, but it follows Iris, who has just moved to New York City when she runs into this Italian place that makes gelato, and when she eats the gelato, she realizes it is the same recipe that her mom used, which is a recipe that is supposed to be a secret. So she ends up trying to figure out how they got the recipe, and in the meantime, she also comes to the handsome Gio, who is the nephew of the owner of the gelato shop. So that is this book. This was a fun kind of wintry book. I don't think it was a Christmassy book, more like a wintry book. I would say this is a short, fun read. Then we have Christmas at the Cupcake Cafe. This is, which I didn't realize when I read it, book 2 in this series. So the 2 main characters were already together, and one was living in the US and one was living in England throughout the majority of this book. I didn't really enjoy this book. I really did not. I would say this was just a slow and exhausting read. It was not a romance book, Christmas romance book that I was looking for when I read it, where, the 2 main characters at least lived in the same city and not in 2 different countries. So there wasn't really a lot of romance going on other than through long distance phone calls. So that's why it's a slow and exhausting read to me. Next up is The Hazelwood, which is a fairy tale fantasy book that follows 17-year-old Alice. Her mother has disappeared, and she ends up in the Hazel Woods, which is the basis for her grandmother's book of dark fairy tales. And there she needs to rescue her mother. So this book kind of follows this story. It was a very interesting story. I enjoyed it, and I thought the conclusion was a good one for this. So I would say it's not really dark. I would say mysterious and atmospheric. It's not like a dark fairy tale fantasy, but there's definitely a mysterious things going on. And it's definitely atmospheric in those woods. Jewels of the Sun. So this is a romance book set in Ireland. First book in this trilogy. I love any book set in Ireland, especially romance ones. I loved all the characters in this book. This was a reread for me this past year. I forgot how much I really love this trilogy. I can't find the second book for some reason, so I may have to order that so I can continue on. But we're going to put this as a short, fun read. This was a great read. I love this series. The Defects. I read this on a 24-hour readathon. And this was in the middle of the night read, so I don't really remember too much about it. What I do remember is that people were supposed to get these magical abilities when they came of age, and if you didn't, you were called a defect, and the main character never developed those, so she was a defect. She had 2 good friends, and they came to realize that there was some bad things happening in the town that they were growing up in that might be contributing to the defects. That's what I get when I read at 2 a.m. So this was an okay book. I would just say it was short and fun. It wasn't anything crazy. The Complete Persepolis is another graphic novel book, another coming of age. This one was set in Iran, and this is based on a true story. This is a memoir that followed the author's coming of age living in Iran. So I would say this is beautiful because the pictures were um it doesn't really require patience though. It's not short and fun. We're gonna say beautiful, but requires patience, I suppose. It was a good read. I enjoyed it. First Frost is just a novella. So we're just gonna put it here. The first book in the series was, let me find it on here, was Touch of Frost. So this book is a fantasy book that's set in a school where people who have kind of like magical powers attend. The main character had no idea the school existed until one day the superintendent of the school shows up at her doorstep and invites her to the school for the magical abilities that she has shown, which I can't remember what they were. They have something to do with maybe fast forwarding and rewinding time, maybe something like that. I'm not sure. Turns out that she is the only person of her kind at the school. Most of the people are like from sons and daughters of these like Greek goddesses and have like all these like powers with strength and speed and things like that. And hers is more of a mind ability, so she doesn't quite fit in. This is another short, fun book. I will put that there next to First Frost, which was the prequel to Touch of Frost. The Bone Collector. So this is book 1 in his thriller series, which is where a Lincoln Rhyme, who was a very good like police officer, profiler, I forget exactly what his title was, but very good at taking a CSI, taking a crime scene in and being able to solve it. But during his last time on service, he ended up injured and paralyzed and has kind of been out of the crime field for like many, many years until he gets pulled back in because there's a serial killer going throughout New York City who is killing people on a very quick basis. So they need his help to solve the crime, and his liaison, who is a young policewoman who kind of becomes his protege. This is book 1 in the very long series. This was another good book. It's a good crime thriller. I would say it's dark and thrilling. It's definitely has some dark parts in it. The Ex-Hex. So this is a Halloween romance book about witches. It's like a enemies to lovers almost book, I think. Oh no, so kind of like it's like a lovers to enemies back to lovers again, because they were dating and then Vivian ended up putting a curse on Reese, didn't know it till Reese was back in town, and bad things started happening to Reese, and now they have, as well as to the town, so now they have to figure out how to break this curse before the town is destroyed. This was okay. I wasn't really engaged in this book too much. I would say it started well but fell flat. I wasn't really, it was like, it's an okay book. Wasn't my favorite. September by Rosamund Pilcher. So Rosamund Pilcher is probably my favorite kind of like just fiction author that writes just general fiction novels that are very character driven, set in the United Kingdom. And so far I have not found a book I haven't loved by her. So September is one of those. They're definitely kind of longer books. I would say they're beautiful, but they require patience to read. This book was set in a small village where the community was coming together to throw a dance in September, and this is kind of the build up to it. There's a lot of family secrets that get revealed. There's a lot of stuff that kind of goes on, and it's just a good like atmospheric, character driven book. Reunited at Sugar Maple Road. So Debbie Mason is probably my favorite cozy romance author. I love her plots. I love her stories. I love her characters. I love how there's not a lot of spice in them and they're just fun, cozy reads. This is one of my all-time favorites from her. This is, I think, book 6 in her Highland series. And this book is set in fall, and it's like it's the most fallish romance book that you could have. It's got Halloween in it. It's got football in it. It's got like apple picking in it. And I absolutely adore this book, and I'm really thinking about rereading it this fall. So I would put this into, I would say like a gentle breeze. This is just an easygoing, cozy romance, cozy fall romance. So we're going to put it up there. All right, we are almost at the end, which is good because I feel like I'm losing my voice. The Museum of Magic. So this book is a fantasy book. That's book 1. I think she wrote another one. She wrote this on the, whatever the Amazon Villa is, where they release a chapter at a time, and then the book eventually came out. This is a fun book that follows it's like a YA book that follows Emmy, who has grown up in this museum of witchcraft, and then it follows a fae boy named Puck, who one day appears at her doorstep and accidentally knocks over a centuries-old witch bottle. And now the two of them have to travel to different places to get the contents to make this witch bottle again, because if not, there's a lot of bad things that may or may not happen. But this is a short, fun read. I love this book. I still need to read the second one. Haven't gotten to it yet, but definitely recommended. All right, next up we have Murder on the Orient Express, which is a Agatha Christie mystery novel that takes place on a train in the middle of, I think it's like the Czech Republic, and someone gets murdered on the train in the middle of nowhere after the train got stopped for a snowstorm, and therefore the only suspects are those who are already aboard the train. This was a good mystery. I loved how this mystery ended. I had no clue what was going on. I would say it's mysterious and atmospheric. We'll put it in that category. I was going between that and beautiful but requires patience, because it is a little bit on the slower side as well, because each chapter you're interviewing a different character. There's not a lot of action that is going on. So I was kind of between those two, but we'll put it in the mysterious atmospheric category. Then we have the Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is also one of my most favorite reads this year. The only regret I have is that I didn't read it in winter. I read it in summer. I felt like it would have been the perfect winter read. So I'm holding off on the rest of the series to read them over the winter. So this book, I don't even know. This book is awesome. I love this book. It follows the main character, Emily, who has decided to make this encyclopedia of fairies. She works at a college, and she goes up to like the islands in Norway, some Nordic region, to investigate the fairies that live there, so she can add their chapter to the book. And her rival at the university kind of follows her there as well. And then some things happen, and it's just a really good read. I love this story. So we're going to put this kind of like easygoing, cozy type read. All right. Then we have Agatha Christie's Crooked House, another mystery book. This one has more action to it. Again, a nice surprise ending. Probably one of my favorite Agatha Christie books of all time. It's not a series, so it doesn't fit into her two main detective series. This book was awesome, though. I love this book. It's set back in World War II. It follows two characters who meet in Egypt, I believe, and then they kind of go off their separate ways for 3 years because the woman is going back to her family in England. The guy is going to be a international worker somewhere else during World War II. And then he comes back to meet up with the woman again, only to be told that she cannot marry him because her grandfather just got murdered and her whole family is under investigation. And it turns out that the guy's dad happens to be the chief detective who is investigating it. So he gets kind of drawn in because he has an inside look into this family through her, and the crime ends up needing to be solved. I love this book. This is a short, fun book. I really enjoy this one. Sacred is I don't even really remember what this one is. We'll say short and fun. It's like the novella to Atlas 6, I believe. Dear Haiti, Love Elaine is another coming-of-age fiction novel set in Haiti. The main teenager is Elaine, who gets in trouble at school because she kind of does things her own way. So she ends up getting almost expelled, and the deal that her dad makes with the school is that she'll go to Haiti to work at her aunt's charity and to also kind of learn her heritage. And there she ends up learning things about her mom and her dad that she didn't know. Both of them are from Haiti, and their families still live in Haiti, so she finds out like these secrets that she didn't know about. And this is all told through like journal entries, like newspaper articles, videos, things like that. This was a good book. This was I would say, easygoing book. There's definitely like mysteries to be solved, but I would say it's like a gentle breeze, easygoing. Mama Hisa's Mice. So this book takes place in, where was it? It was either Kuwait or Qatar. It takes place in the Middle East. It's kind of another coming of age that follows three young men, and it follows a current timeline as well as a timeline of them growing up. It's a good read. It's like a literary fiction read. There is some like action in it, but it's very character driven and very like kind of informative. I'm pretty sure the author is from the country that the book is set in. It's definitely, I would definitely recommend reading this one. It's one of those that takes patience as well. The beginning I remember just confusing me, but the further you read on, you kind of see what's going on. It's a very kind of like heartwarming type book. I think it is a book that you need to look up trigger warnings before you read it, though. I'm very glad that I ended up reading that one. Then we have Christmas at the Borrow a Bookshop. So this is like the second book in this series, where the premise is that this owner rents out his bookshop to two people who want to experience running a bookshop. And in the first series, the two fall in love. Obviously, in this series, again, they end up falling in love. So it's like a cozy romance book set in a bookshop. It was okay. I would say it's just a short, fun read. There's nothing like crazy about it. The Three Body Problem was the most confusing book I have ever read. I don't even know how to explain it. It's a show on Netflix now. It has to do with this video game, people playing this game, and solving this three-body problem, which is where a planet has 3 different moons and what that causes to happen atmospherically on the planet. Very science-based. It's very science-based. It's written by an author from China, so a lot of what goes on has to do with like the historical history of China, and is told kind of from that standpoint, so it can be a little bit confusing. I would say this is beautiful, but requires patience. Lots of patience to read. There's 2 more books in the series that I haven't gotten to yet. They're in my series jar. I haven't pulled them yet, though. Next up is Seven Graves, One Winter. This is a Nordic thriller set in Greenland that I read for my Around the World challenge. This book was interesting. It's definitely a unique plot. It follows a cop who was injured, so got kicked off the police force, only to be almost reinstated to solve this crime when the daughter of a politician ends up murdered. So I would say this is more of a dark, thrilling book. So we're gonna put it in that category. It's a wide, like, there's like many books in this series, and I don't even know if I started at the beginning of the whole series or not, but it was overall a good book. All right, next we have Can't Spell Treason Without T, another one of my favorite books for the year. This is just a cozy fantasy novel that follows Reina and Keontae as they try to leave their jobs and set up a tea shop that sells tea and books. This is just fun. I love this book. This is a short, fun read. Actually, I would say it's an easygoing. We're going to put it under easygoing, cozy. Highly recommend. All right, then we have What the River Knows, which is another fantasy book, almost a romantasy, but not quite. Almost an enemies to lovers, but not quite. So this book is set in Egypt, and it follows the main character, who is Inez, whose parents have just died in Egypt while she's living in Brazil. So she ends up taking a trip to Egypt to try to solve the crime of what happened to her parents, only to find that there are many other mysteries that need to be solved in the meantime. So I would say that this book I don't even know where to put this book. I guess mysterious and atmospheric is good enough. kind of fits into that. Not fully. Not the strongest one for that category, but that's what we're going with. It's not dark and thrilling. And I wouldn't say it's short or fun either. The Bear and the Nightingale by Arden. This is a good book based on like a Russian fairy tale. It's like a fantasy book. It's kind of like this mystery, atmospheric book. It's book 1 in the series as well. It's, like I said, set in kind of like Siberia, Russia, in this small village where where household spirits are no longer being devoted to, and things start falling apart in this village. And it follows the young girl Vasilisa, who has to defy her people to save her village. This is a mysterious and atmospheric book for sure. This is the perfect book to read in winter. Highly recommend. And then last up is A Tempest of Tea, which is a fantasy book. It's kind of like a heist book where a group of people come together to plan a heist. This was an okay book. Honestly, I don't remember. I remember the characters, but I don't remember a lot of what happened in it. So it wasn't like a book that I was very engaged in. So, I will just put in mysterious and atmospheric. I think I liked it when I was reading it, but obviously it wasn't the book I was most engaged in. So there we have it. All the books I read in the past year sorted into their categories. Let me know what you thought of the books that I read. Let me know if you read them or if you would put these books in different categories in the comments below. Next up, I have my reading challenge for the month coming out next week, which is based on a game I created based on a popular TV show, and I'm excited to see what you guys think of it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see future videos by me, please hit the subscribe button. And otherwise, I hope everyone is enjoying their September, getting through their TBRs. I've read 1 book on my TBR so far, so I have 8 more to go in the next 3 weeks. So hopefully I can do it. Otherwise, like I said, hope everyone is enjoying their September, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!